Okay, so today on the channel we're going to attempt to print from Lightroom, and hopefully I can show you a few little tricks and tips along the way here to help you out so you can print your own images, because there's nothing better than doing your photography from start to finish by taking the photo, editing it, and then printing it. Stay tuned. Alright, so we flipped over to the computer here, and we're going to walk through how I set up Lightroom to print an image. I have a friend of mine from high school who has ordered this print, which is pretty cool. So thanks for ordering that. This is the image of the Comet Neo eyes that I shot, geez, I guess it'd be a couple months ago now. So when I go to print, now I don't always print in Lightroom. Reason being is that sometimes images are just the way I want them already, and so like I don't have to do any cropping or anything. I just go into the Canon application for the printer and I just print the image through there, and it works very good, and it's also less confusing because let's face it, the print module in Lightroom can be very confusing if you're using it for the first time. Sometimes I still get confused in it. So first thing I'm going to do, so this person has ordered a 5x7. So first thing I will do is I'll come in and I will crop this image to a 5x7. You can see that when I go back to the original size, there's a little more real estate to the photo. That's because today's DSLRs and mirrorless cameras shoot in what is known as a 2:3 crop or an 8x12 sort of size. So when we crop it to a 5x7, we have to make some choices. And so the choice I make on this one is to scroll this down so I get all of the barn, and I still have the Comet in view quite nicely. I'm going to say done there. The other thing I'll do is in this case here, I want the blues to really come out. So I will pull the blues up a little bit, just for printing purposes though. That's all this is for. I would never ever digitally, put this image anywhere with all these adjustments. This is purely for printing. Now, exposure wise, this was at 0. I've bumped it up to a couple of stops of light because I know that when I print this image, what you see on the paper isn't going to match exactly what I see on the screen. There's a reason for that. Your monitor you're looking at, especially if you get into like Apple products and stuff, it's meant to be as appeasing as possible to the eye. Unfortunately, printers just aren't capable of creating that. Your monitor is backlit, so these blues in here really light up and stick out, and it's very hard for that to transfer onto paper, unless you took a light and put behind the paper, and then you would probably really see that stuff stand out. So we have to make a few adjustments in here because I'm cheap and I haven't paid to calibrate my monitor. However, I've done this enough times now that I know what changes I need to make, and depending on what colors I want to bring out affects what changes I make over here in the develop module. One of the things that I will pull up will be the vibrance and the saturation. Highly oversaturated right now, highly vibrant right now, but that's okay because when it prints, it's actually going to print fairly normal. So, and we'll see that at the end here. So that's probably about all I'll do to the image in develop. Then I'll pop over to the print module. So up here in the top right, we click on print. Now, number one thing I do is I'm going to print a 5x7. So I want to go down to the bottom left and I want to set my paper up. So I'm printing on my Canon printer. It prints up to 13x19. But today we're printing 5x7, so we're going to select 5x7. It's going to come from the rear tray, and we want to print it in a portrait portrait layout, because that's what this is. Okay, and then we're going to go over here to the top right, and we've got single image, picture package, or custom package. So we're going to, in this case, select single image. Now, if you wanted to do a picture package, okay, where you had a couple of different, size photos on here, I could bring this one in and drag it and drop it on here. Okay, what ends up happening is it will print kind of like when you got your school photos for your kids. You can lay that all out. You can actually come down here and change the color of the page. Okay, if you select page background color. So let's say you're actually putting together a series of photos and you want them all to print on one page. You can see how I changed the color of that background. So now what will happen is it'll actually print that gray color on here, or if I wanted red or whatever, right? It'll print that so that you can actually frame that photo with 2 or 3 different layouts on it. Okay, we're not going to select that today because we're just doing one single image. So we're going to select our single image. Okay. Zoom to fill. You might have that checked automatically. I don't. I didn't have it on the last time I was in here. Reason being is I sized my photo to fit the paper. However, if you didn't, and we had our margins turned up here, I can show you what it does. So if I go 0.2 on all these, or thereabouts. Okay, I can go zoom to fill now. And you can see what it did was it just popped the image out to fill in these white gaps on the sides. Okay, let's pull these back down. Rotate to fit, we don't need to do that. Repeat one photo per page, so that doesn't apply here. Stroke border. So I want to I want to print this photo with no border because I am putting it in a 8x10 mat. So what I want is to have the printer print from edge to edge. Now, not every printer out there will do that. Some of the older ones won't. Most of the newer ones will. As you can see, I have no white around this image at all. So my printer will print right to the edge of the paper, which is what we want in this case. Now, if I didn't, let's say this person wasn't wanting a mat and they were just going to frame it, then what I would probably do is I'd click on stroke border and I would just print the image with a white border. Now, it's not actually printing white, obviously. What it's doing is it's just shrinking the image down and printing the image cropped in a bit from the edges. The nice thing with this is it always keeps the image centered no matter what you do for a border. Okay. The other thing you can do is change the color of that border. So let's say we wanted a gray color. Okay, and now I can do this, and you can see that it's got a border that's now gray. Okay, so that's how your border works. Margins, like I said before, I've got mine pretty much zeroed out as much as I can possibly zero them out anyway, because I'm going to print edge to edge. If you wanted to print margins, you can set them up, but really what you're doing is basically what the stroke border function does. So we're just going to get rid of them, and that's that. Okay, now cell size. So this is something else that can affect. Up here we had zoom to fit and we had margins. So you've seen how when we had the margins, how it shrunk the picture in. Sometimes you have to be careful too, because you can print it and it still doesn't fill the page. And the reason being is if you come to the cell size, and even though I've cropped it 5x7, right, and I've put it on 5x7 paper, it now looks like this, and it prints with this border around it. And the reason being is that sometimes the cell size isn't maximized, so I haven't got it set to 5x7 here. Okay, so it's important to double check that before you print. Show guides, yeah, it doesn't really matter whether you have them on or not. You can have them on or have them all off. You can see that's the ruler up top, so I can tell my image is 5 inches wide. Page bleed, that'll just show you if you're printing a full-size page, if you're printing outside the dimensions of the paper. Margins and gutters, margins we are already looking at, image cells, and dimensions, which gives me the size of the photo itself. Page background color, we looked at that when I was showing you if you're printing a package, let's say, and you could change the background color. Identity plate, I'm not going to put that on because it's basically a watermark. Photo info, I mean, you can print that if you want. In this case here, I'm not. But let's say you wanted to name it. You could actually name this whatever you wanted, and it would print the name of the photo down here. So we're not doing that today. Okay, print to. So this is the real important stuff right here. Print to. So printer obviously is what we're going to do. Oops. Let's open that back up. There we go. Print resolution, 300 dots per inch. I like to, or points per inch. I like to print at 300 pixels per inch. So that I find gives a good high quality print, especially when you start printing higher. Printing not a higher, but a larger print. Something in the 13 by 19 range. If you have an image that isn't 300 ppi and you set it to 300 ppi, it will try to increase it so that it does give it more pixels per inch. Print sharpening, very important. I always turn this on. Reason being, when you look at the image on the screen here, it's nice and tack sharp, everything looks good. However, when you print and the ink goes into the paper, it bleeds a little bit, meaning it's not as sharp. Okay, so the ink droplets will go outside of where they were supposed to. So what I do is I turn on print sharpening, and I just set it to standard usually, and I pick my paper. So in this case here we're doing a luster, so I'm choosing my media type as glossy, but there's also matte. Now matte tends to bleed a little bit more, so if you choose standard matte, it's going to sharpen it more than it would on standard glossy because the ink doesn't run as much on the glossy. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Color management, so this is one that's probably one of the biggest struggles with printing. I'm going to flip over to this website. So this is the paper I'm using today. I'm using the 5x7 ink press luster, and one of the things that you got to be careful with when printing is making sure you have the ICC profiles for your printer and for your paper. Now, I'm printing on a Canon printer, so in here it'll tell you that I actually don't have to have the ICC profiles. It's already built in. However, if you're using an Epson or an HP, any one of these, you would click on here, you would download the profile, follow the instructions as installed on your computer, and then you would be able to select that profile from that drop down menu in Lightroom. Now in this case here we're using Photo Paper Plus Semi-Gloss 2 is the setting they're recommending I use on a Canon printer. So when I come over here, okay, I have my inkjet ICC profiles, okay, for my printer. I've got the semi-gloss luster loaded, okay, so that's what I'm going to use today. If you had other ones, they would show up here if they're installed. Okay, you would click on other and select whichever one that you're using. Now, like I said, today we're using the luster from ink press, and they suggested that I use a semi-gloss, so that's the one we've gone with. Perceptual and relative, I never change this. I always leave it on relative. Perceptual and relative, what that means is basically, let's say you get a color on this photo that the printer doesn't know what to do with. It doesn't know how to print that color. If you put it on perceptual, it basically will try to preserve the color as best as it can. If you put it on relative, it'll pick the pixels around that color and try to make a new color out of it. I've printed the same image twice, once using perceptual, once using relative, and I've never seen a difference. So I don't know. It's up to you if you want to change those, but I've always left it on relative and never had a problem. Now, print adjustment. So print adjustment is basically the brightness that it shows up on the paper. Okay. When I print this image, it's going to print fairly dark on a piece of paper. Now, I have, when we went into the develop module, I had bumped up my f-stop on light, probably 2 full stops or a little bit more for exposure, so I've already compensated a little bit on that. However, I know that my monitor is not calibrated, and so I am still going to want it to be a little bit brighter. And so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to go plus 30. Now this is a trial and error thing, and this is where you are going to burn a little bit of paper. Just trying to figure out where that image needs to be. Now I know, having printed nightscapes before and astrophotography, I have to bump the brightness up a little bit more than if I was doing a daytime landscape. A sunny sunflower field, I wouldn't need to probably even adjust that brightness. But for nightscape and astrophotography, for sure I need to bump it up. It just makes the blacks come out a little bit better. It makes the colors come out a little bit richer. So we'll go with a plus 30. Again, it's trial and error. I'm going to print this and see what it looks like. And, I may have to adjust this down or up and print another one. It's possible. It happens for sure. So yeah, we're going to get set up over on the printer here with the camera, and I'll come back and I'll click the print button, and you can watch the print come out of the printer. Alright, got the photo printed, checked it in the sunlight, looks good. And when I hold it up to this one, it's a pretty close match to what's on our screen. So I'm happy with that. We'll go with that, and we'll mat this up for the customer and send it off to them. Alright, so hopefully that helps you out. That print turned out really well. I'm quite happy with the results. I'm sure the customer will be as well. If you want more tutorials like this, feel free to comment and let me know. I'll help out wherever I can. I love to teach and help others. So if you have any questions about printing, I don't know everything about it, but feel free to send me your questions in the comment section if you want, and I'll try to help you out as best as I can. Thanks for watching. Click on the subscribe button, click on the notification bell, and like the video if you watched it. And feel free to share this video if you think it'll help someone else. Bye for now.